Okay, I have a bunch of clips today, and I always do. Monday's my deep dive Monday, so I don't usually have a guest. I made a couple exceptions, but I pretty much don't have a guest on Monday because I really want to immerse us today in this discussion about freedom in America and what the promise of freedom means going forward. And so I divided I have this segment I'm calling the November Ballot 5 Freedom Issues. I'm just going to tell you the 5 issues I want to hit. They're current events, but they all tie back to this promise of freedom and the founding of this country. And those are systemic cultural suppression of speech. That's a freedom issue. Again, systemic cultural suppression of speech, the defund the police, meaning lynch mob, authorize a lynch mob mission, that is an anti-freedom mission of the left, the communist takeover disguised as a race war, that's the next one, COVID crushing constitutional freedom, and finally America's heritage erased. So we're going to talk about a bunch of issues, but I want to urge you to think about the idea these are issues rooted in the question, do we still believe in the foundational liberty America promised or not? Or are we just surrendering? And folks, we cannot surrender. So let me start with the first one, and just a very brief story of this. I called this segment we're in this segment about the 5 ballot issues, but the first one is systemic cultural suppression of speech. So I have a good friend who lives near us, and she has had her house painted. She has a very small, simple one-story house, just had it painted. She had a Trump sign in her yard, Trump pen sign in her yard, and a new neighbor moved in across the street, and he had a Biden sign in his yard. So she's being friendly, talks to him, hey, how you doing? He came over to say, actually, we were talking, people in the street were talking, and, it might be dangerous to the street for you to leave your Trump Pence sign in the yard. I mean, there are several Biden signs. Here's the only Trump Pence. And, this is a very rough time here. We've had riots. And, it might not be very smart for you to leave a Trump Pence sign in your yard. To which she said, hey, you have a Biden sign? He said, yeah, I know. But, you can't really, it's very dangerous right now. And you're kind of in, you could bring trouble to the neighborhood. You really should take it down. And he said, and I see you just had your house repainted. Sure hate to have anybody, ruin your new paint job. So, I don't know if he's threatening her. I don't know if he's just trying to be a healthy, really friendly, nice new neighbor. But his point was, you can't have your yard sign out because other people don't like it. The mob rule of the left will be angry with you, and they're trying to tear down Trump and tear down everything about America. So it's dangerous for you to have a political sign in your yard. The rest of us can have Biden signs, but you can't have your Trump sign. He wasn't even embarrassed. And I don't know if he was personally threatening her or not. She said she couldn't tell. She left it out there, and sure enough, someone, defaced it, and so she has it on her porch. But people, we are losing the culture war over free speech in this country on issue after issue after issue. Whether it's a front yard sign, whether it is the story I talked with you about last week at Florida State University, where the students voted out the student Senate president because he believes in the teachings of the Catholic Church. He's talking, in fact, made the remarks that got him booted out in a meeting, in a call with Catholic students. But they felt justified. And what is happening more and more is people use the term, well, it's political correctness gone amok. It's more than political correctness. It is absolute cultural repression of free speech. Now, I understand the First Amendment free speech is about government cannot limit your free speech, but we as American citizens, we've got to insist to ourselves, to each other, we stand for free speech for everybody. We stand for free speech. That includes the idea you're allowed to put out a sign in your yard even if your neighbors might be offended, even if they find your political views offensive. I have to see people in my neighborhood with signs out like in their yard, anyone but Trump, or any sane adult, 2020, or Biden signs. I don't agree with them, but I don't go knock on their door and threaten them or warn them. But we've slowly allowed this mob mentality that's taken over the American left to force us in our private conversations, our private conduct, to be silent, to step back, to be careful. This cannot continue in a country rooted in freedom. So that was my very first example of this ideology I'm talking about, this systemic cultural suppression of speech. Colleges, universities, everyday conversation, we have to be willing to step up. Next one I want to hit, there's a defund the police and the lynch mob rule. I want to just have Matt the Wonderful play a clip for you. I sent him a bunch of clips. This is a series of remarks by, I guess I'm going to do the one first by Tim Scott. So this is Senator Tim Scott, and he made these remarks on the floor of the Senate. Very short little clip by Tim Scott.
There's a scripture in the Bible in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 33, somewhere around verse 6. And that scripture talks about a watchman on a wall. And his job is to simply say, there's danger coming. Very important job. The watchman's job is to simply say, there is danger coming. I had that conversation, as Senator Perdue spoke about, 5 years ago. I didn't find anyone on the other side willing to engage in that conversation then. And here we are 5 years later. There is danger coming. I want us to hear this clearly, because as we look out in the streets of America and we see more unrest and we see more challenging situations, realize that there is danger coming.
Okay, folks, what he was addressing was he had worked, as you likely know, with Senator Mitch McConnell to come up with a bill out of the U.S. Senate, Republican controlled, just barely, relating to reforming the police. And part of what we gave a very lengthy speech. He was talking about the challenges in America with the black community often not trusting local police. Clearly, he's aware of the effort of the left to stir up that tension, to encourage black Americans to not trust the police. At the same time, he was a great spokesman for it, Tim Scott was, because he said, I can tell you, he talked about the idea, and he's talked about other times, how he's fully aware that there is a problem with some police officers in the black community, and how he, as a dignified member of the U.S. Senate, always wearing a suit, always driving a nice car, always following the law, has been followed by the police as he goes home from his job. I'm not sure where he stays when he's in Washington, but he talks about leaving the Capitol, being followed, being pulled over more times than he can imagine. He's not saying America's perfect. What he's saying is even more important. He's saying, because what happened, so they came up with this great bill that the Republicans in the Senate came up with, and the Democrats simply used the filibuster rule and said, it's not going forward. Sorry, we're not going to do it. Now, the Republicans could have attempted to overcome that filibuster, but this is Tim Scott eloquently saying, look, there's danger here. We're headed to dangerous times. We have to actually try to do something. He thought his bill was the most effective, the wisest way to move forward, to recognize that the policing function stays in the states, but the federal government can do a great deal to help, to inform, to provide training, to provide information. It was a bill full of good ideas, and McConnell liked it, and the Republicans went for it, and it got shut down. But his warning there, the danger coming, it really is true. And one reason there's danger coming is because if America were to move forward in solving the tension between the police departments and black citizens, and there is tension there, if America moved forward with that and made progress, the Democrat Party would lose one of their major talking points they run on all the time, which is essentially America's a deeply racist place and police are terrible and we're the only ones on your side. So we have an opportunity to move forward, an opportunity to make progress. He went on to, in that speech, it was a lengthy speech, he went on to point out that he had offered the Democrats numerous times, what amendments would you like to put in? Tell us what you want in this bill. They didn't want to work with him. These are the Democrats claiming they care about black America. They're being asked, what would you like to put in this bill being put forward by the U.S. Senate to try to move us forward past these times of tension? They wouldn't play ball. The Democrats would not get involved, lied, and said, several of them made statements, well, we didn't have any say in this. We couldn't put amendments in. So Tim Scott said, yeah, I told you could. I invited them. You wouldn't get involved. He says, when Senator Scott says there's danger coming, part of the danger I want to tell you there is that the Democrats in this country, the Democrat Party, do not want to solve this tension. They don't want to solve it Because if they do solve that tension, if they do get to where we have better police relations with everyone in the community, including Black Americans, we do resolve the challenges. It takes away the Democrat talking point of this is a terrible, evil, racist place, and no one cares but us. So this is I thought it was really profound. Here you have Tim Scott trying to help. You have the Democrats blocking it. And then, not even when he's saying, I want your participation, they don't want to try to solve it. Understand, the Democrats don't want to try to solve it. They thrive on, they gain political power from agitating the racial tension in this country. It is a source of political power to the Democrats. And it takes away the freedom, to our theme here today, it takes away the freedom of all citizens to live in a more orderly and safe society. A more orderly and safe society. We had a couple of points about this whole if you defund police, which is all the left has gotten onto. And many on the left are saying, yeah, defund police, just take it all away. I'll tell you two other quick things about that. One is, I sent Matt this picture. Yeah, it is clip 4. So what happened, so there were very violent, as you well know, very violent riots and looters and marchers roaming the country in many of the big cities and destroying property. Well, one particular thing happened and now I'm not remembering, St. Louis, I think St. Louis, but wherever it was, there was a couple who's had rioters on their street who then entered these people's property. Actually came on to they said, pierce the perimeter of this apparently very wealthy home. And I want to show you what happened. Okay, folks. That is in Missouri. That is a couple whose property was invaded by the rioters who came onto their property, and they emerged from their home. You can see the guy's got whatever that thing is, a big gun, AK-47 or something. The wife has a pistol, and they're yelling, "Get off our property." And I want to tell you, when I say this whole defund police effort ties into freedom, this is a really good example of why. If the police won't come, if you can't trust the police to come, if you don't have police anymore, you have to call for, I don't know, community organizers or, counselors to discuss whether or not these people ought to be allowed on your property. People will take the law into their own hands. These people did not do anything more than threaten. They came out with their guns. They said, get off our property, and the mob finally moved on. But this kind of mob activity is fed by, it will increase if we go along with this inane notion of defunding the police. Inane notion somehow, if we just defund the police and send in guidance counselors instead, or send in, drug and alcohol abuse counselors, instead of having a robust police force, this kind of thing will happen. Fortunately, that couple, well-trained, did not fire, but that's what it took to get people off of their property, and you will see more of that. This is why we like to have the rule of law and official police forces who are paid for by taxpayers, who are answerable to the police chief and ultimately to the public, because that's how you maintain civil society. And that's how you avoid becoming the wild, wild west or lynch mobs, is because you have a rule of law and everyone must follow it. And when you have the police, really, they have been not just mocked and ridiculed by the left, but they have been put in a position where they're a little tentative and to even step forward because they don't want to be the next one in the spotlight, in the crosshairs of the Democrat media mob, accusing them if they arrest someone and are a little bit rough in getting them into the car or getting them handcuffed. They don't want to be the next one accused. And so Tim Scott is exactly right. We're in a very dangerous time, and the danger to freedom is when you have the rule of law and you have laws enacted by duly elected people, and those people pass laws that are supposedly reflective of the values of the citizens who elect them. The police are there to enforce those laws. When you have that system, it's never perfect, but it minimizes the kind of conduct you saw with those people coming out of their house with guns. The rule of law and an orderly police department, forever fine. We need to improve the police functioning. We need to improve training, all the things Tim Scott wanted to do. But if you don't have that, you have absolute chaos in the cities and around the country. That's why this almost beyond description idiocy of defunding the police. Last quick thing on defunding the police, as just a typical hypocritical leftist. So Minneapolis City Council voted to defund the police, and they immediately after that voted to use tax dollars to hire a private security force to protect people on the Minneapolis City Council. So don't you see, the citizens get no protection. The citizens, oh no police for you, we're going to let the mob rule. But these city council members who voted to defund get to pay private security force. Next thing, on my third issue on the 5 issues in America on the that are freedom issues on the ballot is what we do about the police. But the third one has to do with this recognizing how radical the left is. What we're really talking about is the communist takeover of America disguised as a race war. Do not buy into the left's argument that we're headed for a race war. That the left would love to have you saying that, would love to have people beginning to have more racial animus between the races. And that is the last thing. That is utterly inconsistent with the idea of America, utterly unacceptable in America. What the left is using the race war to bring the communist mission they have in mind. So I'll tell you, I will tell you, the radical left in this country thought for a really long time, after President Trump was elected, they thought they could get rid of him in some way. They thought they'd get rid of him when they first were trying the whole Russia-Trump collusion, and the headlines are filled, and weeks and months actually, and years of examination, investigation, testimony, depositions, irrelevant charges, all of the charges, criminal charges brought, nothing to do at all with the the non-existent Trump-Russia collusion. But they thought they had that. They thought they had him in the impeachment effort. They thought they had him in all sorts of other idiotic things they tried. And what you're seeing now is and maybe I shouldn't say it's the last gasp, but it's the next volley the left is bringing to try to take down President Trump. And they're taking him down not because they don't like his personality or his tweets. The radical left is striving to take President Trump down because he is restoring the idea of America as founded, the idea of a country rooted in freedom. He is taking down the swamp. He is reasserting the value, the beauty, the importance of America. This is why the left hates him. The whole race war, Black Lives Matter movement, riots, and all of the destruction they've done is just something the radical leftists are using as a tool because it intimidates citizens. It makes a lot of people say, well, I didn't, if they're really that upset, there must be terrible things wrong. Sure, I think whatever Black Lives Matter wants, let's just give it to them. They use it because people surrender to it. But I want to hit, because that's what we are watching. But I'll tell you, Ayanna Pressley, who is a Democrat member of the United States Congress from Massachusetts, she made a statement as to Black Lives Matter. This, my very fine friend Matt, is clip 1. I think clip 1. This is this is Ayanna Pressley, Democrat from Massachusetts.
While black, jogging while black, sleeping while black. We have been criminalized for the very way we show up in the world. Under the harsh gaze of far too many, my black body is seen as a threat, always considered armed. Centuries of institutionalized oppression will not be undone overnight, for racism in America is as structural as the marble pillars of this very institution. With the power of the pen, we must legislate accountability, dismantle these systems, and move in the direction of justice and healing. The Justice and Policing Act is a critical step forward, and I applaud the leadership of the Congressional Black Caucus. But our work is unfinished. There is a rallying cry in communities across the nation. Black Lives Matter is a mandate from the people. It's time. Pay us what you owe us. Our black skin is not a crime. It is the beautiful robe of nation builders.
She's right that their black skin is not a crime, that no one's skin color is a crime. No one's skin color, no one's race, ethnicity, national origin, skin tone, nobody should be proud or ashamed of the package they came wrapped in. Whenever you're born, your skin color you came with, that's how you came. There's no basis for pride or shame in skin color. There is no basis for racism in this country. No one claims that there is no racism. No one claims racism doesn't exist. But what the left is doing, what she is playing off of, is the idea that if they can keep Americans stirred up and thinking that America, especially convincing young black Americans that America is a deeply horrible racist place, that they can keep tension stirred up, they can keep politics stirred up, they can keep people so angry that they will continue these protests, and pretty soon everyone says, okay, government, take charge, give them what they want. What is it they want? They want to end capitalism? Okay, we can go with socialism. They want to release all violent people in prison who are people of color? Okay, let's do it. Whatever they want, there's so much agitation that the answer can be, if we're not careful, that we just surrender the very foundational liberty of America. She says Black Lives Matter is a mandate from the people. Black Lives Matter, the organization, BLM Inc., is a socialist/communist, Marxist, totalitarian, left-wing funded effort to take down America. That's what it is. It's nothing less. Now, individual Black Lives Matter, of course they do. And have the police engage in conduct that was unacceptable and in some cases racist? Sure. Rare, not as common as the left tries to claim. And we are all trying as a society to work to correct those things, to right those wrongs, to fix the procedures that permitted it, to change our training, whatever it takes. But you have to understand the mission of Black Lives Matter is not simply to make America a more fair and more just place. It is to fundamentally, in the way Barack Obama actually meant it, fundamentally transform America away from a country rooted in freedom and to a country rooted in tyrannical government-controlled power from the left. This is what they're doing. It's what they're all about. So she had a long speech, and this tension we're feeling in our country, it's very difficult for elected officials to speak up. But it's inexcusable that they don't. It's inexcusable you don't have more speech coming from Americans who are elected officials who are saying, we want to right the wrongs. We want to have the police, whatever needs to happen, train better, eliminate chokeholds except in extreme circumstances, whatever the rules that need to be changed. But when there's so much silence from elected officials, so much silence from so many people on the right, what happens is the argument, or people hear what's being said by the left, and think, well, I guess it must be true because no one's really defending America. We have to be the ones defending America. So this is Ayanna Pressley. To point out what she closed out, or what she said in her remarks, she said, "It's time. Pay us what you owe us." This is becoming a theme. Other leaders of Black Lives Matter movement have said similar things. Time to pay up. Time for reparations. In fact, the people who were marching through that neighborhood in Missouri, when the couple came out of their house with their arms, with their weapons, saying, get off our property, that crowd was chanting, "Eat the rich, end capitalism. Eat the rich, end capitalism." Well, with these people, as I tell you, friends, they're not looking for justice. They're looking to fundamentally destroy America. That's what the Black Lives Matter, they chant it all the time. They put it up outside of Chaz and Chop, end capitalism. They want either socialism or, they don't know what they want. They just want to be in charge. They want control. And the people who love this country need to be speaking up. I'll tell you a really cool thing happened, a very small thing related to race and all the challenges with these protests, which was, there was a protest in Washington, D.C. At Capitol Hill's Lincoln Park. And at Lincoln Park, there was a protest and protest is too nice a word, rioters, criminals, thugs, arsonists showed up at the Capitol Hill Lincoln Park planning to tear down the monument of Abraham Lincoln with one hand on the Emancipation Proclamation freeing a slave. That, Abraham Lincoln holding the Emancipation Proclamation, and that was one where the rioters showed up. They were going to destroy that to stand up for Black Lives Matter. They're going to destroy a statue dedicated to emancipation. But they were actually greeted with some Black Americans, community elders who surrounded the statue and said, no, you're not doing this, and actually talked to them about why. They tried to, their word, they want to shame the anti-statue protesters, and they need to be shamed. They need to be ridiculed. They need to be told, you cannot do this in this country. One more story I'll tell you very quickly. Before I turn to my fourth of the 5 pieces of freedom today, but there was a poll. In fact, I had it I don't know if I can find it quickly, but there was a poll done for about Mount Rushmore. And if you Mount Rushmore being the very, very beautiful statue, it's been up since, here it is, great, got it. Mount Rushmore, that statue was put up, I think, like 1941 or something. I mean, the carving, it's a carving into the mountains in South Dakota, a very beautiful thing. In Mount Rushmore, there was a survey done, or about Mount Rushmore, a survey done found that 44% of liberal respondents and 58% of very liberal respondents agreed that Mount Rushmore should be torn down. Should be destroyed. When I tell you, people, destroying the statues is destroying, erasing the very memory of the idea of America. Okay, but the fourth thing in my little top 5 November ballot issues, the fourth thing is the idea of COVID and COVID-19. I have a lot to say about COVID today, but I'm going to hit just the high points about how this is a freedom issue itself. First of all, COVID-19 has, even according to NPR and all sorts of liberal sources, news stories coming out. One title, mounting evidence suggests COVID is not as deadly as experts thought. Did they fail again? Antibody tests point to a lower death rate for the coronavirus than first thought. The numbers are trending well on coronavirus. I mean, we have a lower death rate, fewer hospitalizations. You have more people who have found to have the antibodies, meaning they went through coronavirus either with no symptoms or mild symptoms, and now they have the antibodies. It's like they've had a vaccine. And yet in our country, and yet in this country, we still have a push toward the vaccine and a push toward to shut down, to silence the doctors who are trying to say, hey, we're treating with hydroxychloroquine. It's working great. We are curing people of COVID-19 with hydroxychloroquine. Why can't we just do this? Why do we have to have on the looming on the horizon, a mandated vaccine? And even though it's not yet mandated, this theme about freedom in America really matters. I want you to think about this. In America, the government's job, as you heard Senator Bob Hall say on the show last week, the government's job is not to make sure to keep you safe and never let you be sick. The government's job is to protect your liberty. We have coronavirus. We had bad numbers in the beginning. We soon discovered the numbers were bad. In fact, the 15-day shutdown to slow the spread was on March 15th. We're at the end of June. And we're still, in my state, we're talking about reimposing certain limits, reimposing masks must be worn everywhere, reimposing, reducing the restaurants that can be open. We had the governor shut down the bars again, order the bars to be closed, even though the numbers are all great and they're all trending the right way. Healthcare is a fundamental freedom issue. When the government tried to control healthcare by taking charge by Obamacare, by other ways the health mandates come, it's a freedom issue. COVID-19 has become a freedom issue. I'll tell you folks, if we all just say, okay, we'll stay home until you tell us we can go out of our houses. In Texas, we had to stay home for a certain period of time and could only leave for essential reasons, which the government decided, and only essential businesses could be open. But that got, we finally started to grow out of that, and very soon, because of, and in fact, the numbers didn't even justify anything the governor is doing in our great state, but we had a tick up in some numbers in some areas, and you have the government say, okay, we're down to mask required now in Dallas County, that they're going to fine any business owner who doesn't make customers wear a mask. So the fine's on the business owner. So people are saying, well, okay, I'm going to go shop in a different county. I'm not going to shop in this county then. But the point in talking about this today is that the coronavirus is a new opportunity. It's an opportunity for Americans to think again about what the promise of freedom means to you. What does it mean in 2020? If there's another virus out of China, a week, next year or later this year, and so all the health authorities again say, okay, everybody stay home again, everyone wear a mask, and then we're going to have another, even if they find the most perfect vaccine in the world for COVID-19, so there'll be another virus next year, and another virus next year, and then a mutation of COVID-19 the next year, and then the vaccine you got won't be good enough, won't meet the problem for the next one or the next mutation, so now we'll all wait again. And we're slowly surrendering our freedom, the concept of the right to live in liberty, because we're waiting for the government to tell us when they think it's safe to leave our homes. This is a freedom issue. There are a lot of other reasons. I'm going to have to do another segment later in the week on this issue of how the left is using COVID-19 to protect from, really to keep Joe Biden viable, but we'll get to that another time. COVID-19 is being manipulated by the left, and I'm very grateful for doctors, hospital workers, emergency room nurses, emergency room personnel, all of the people working to help people with COVID-19. I'm very grateful for the healthcare workers. America doesn't have to surrender our liberty and agree to wear masks out of our homes just because the government said so. There has to be a rising up of the idea of liberty in this country. So last thing, America's heritage erased. I've touched on it before. This is another way we're losing freedom in this country. We have the loss of freedom in America, the loss of the right of people who live in a jurisdiction, live in some area, they decide to erect a statue, but now the mob says, the left-wing mob has said, again, mostly led by radical leftists who are white. This is not a race thing. Radical leftists who hate the idea of America, trying to destroy the idea of America, they're into tearing down statues. They're into destroying America's history, destroying our memory of our history, destroying what we understand about history. So the destruction of statues, destruction of your history, done by communists since time began. Communists take over, they tear down any symbols that the people might be able to turn to and look to remember their heritage. It's what Taliban did in Afghanistan to get rid of statues that were carved by people who follow Buddhism, because they didn't want the people. People weren't allowed to have statues to Buddha because the Taliban said you could only have statues or anything built that comports with the ideas of Islam. In America, we are surrendering to a mob, tearing down statues themselves, and our government officials are surrendering to tearing down those statues. And it all is a very sinister, ugly picture of how radical the left has become in this country and how spineless too many people are in this country in standing up for our history, standing up for our statues, standing up for the idea that these statues represent, they're part of our history. I will tell you, there's an argument being floated out there, and I just want to quickly share it with you. There's an idea being floated that because the people who put up, for example, a statue of Robert E. Lee, or statues related to the Confederacy, there's an argument that because the people who erected those statues, who raised the government funds, whatever they did, erected these statues in public parks, that because they probably did it or may have done it because they didn't like how the Civil War came out, that they were essentially rebelling against the outcome of the Civil War, and that, say, the statue destroyers, the history destroyers, that fact that those people might have wanted the statues up as a rebellion against the outcome of the Civil War, they're saying that justifies taking them down, because the only reason they're there anyway is these people didn't like the outcome of the Civil War. And I've even seen some conservatives making that argument. Well, really, there probably are pretty bad reasons for some of these statues. Some of these people they really were racist. They really did support slavery, that we shouldn't really be having statues honoring these people. This is exactly the kind of thing the left always does to manipulate the argument so that, yes, we're destroying our history, and you're going to clap for us. You're going to say, yeah, go ahead, we agree. I got to tell you, people, number one, they don't know what was in the people's hearts when they put those statues up. I'd even agree. It sounds very logical. It probably was very logical to assume that some of those statues were put up at the end of the Civil War, honoring Civil War heroes, because people put the statues up because they really liked the things way. They were upset that the North won. They're upset that slavery was ended. They're upset that the Union prevailed. It may be the case. But if you agree that's okay, who decides Who decides what issues, what people were allowed to be thinking when they put up statues? Who decides what moral shortcomings in the statues that we have around our country justify tearing the statues down? I'll give you some examples. All sorts of people have, and they should honor, Martin Luther King, a brilliant, wonderful, brave American. But you could have a Me Too leftist movement, Me Too. Martin Luther King was apparently, and widely reported, very legitimately reported, systematically having relationships outside of his marriage. Okay, so he was an infidel. He had relations. He was not loyal to his marriage covenant. So what if you had the Me Too movement, who is so upset with men who engage in intimacy with, serial intimacy or in some other way or abusive? What if you had those people say, Martin Luther King should come down because, even though he was a great civil rights leader, he had relationships outside of his marriage. He abused women. He took advantage of women. I mean, I realize what I'm saying, my very fine friends, sounds absurd, except to say, who decides what behavior on the part of someone whose likeness is in a statue, who decides whether that was bad enough, good, bad, should come down? And on top of that, you do lose your history. You still have the majority of wacky left liberals in this country who want to blow up Mount Rushmore. They're not kidding. They think it should be taken down because after all, we run through who's on Mount Rushmore. George Washington, he had slaves early on, and so that he might be a good reason. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, but he said some things they didn't like very much, which is true. He said some things they didn't like very much. You could have Thomas Jefferson had slaves. Maybe that's why he should come down. Teddy Roosevelt, who knows what their problem is. I'm getting at, if you decide that you're going to, first, if you're going to surrender to mobs taking your statues down, then you really have surrendered your country. But even if you do it through a lawful basis, you wait for city council or county government or whoever owns the statue to agree to take it down. Where does it stop? Who decides what's okay? Because I can tell you, I think over time, if America truly gets back on course and recognizes the tremendous greatness of America and recognizes there's only one path forward to save freedom in this country, which is to make sure the radical Democrat Party stays out of power, you may have people look back at our era and say, wow, Barack Obama pretty much tried to take us over the cliff to socialism. Look what he did. Barack Obama endangered the Middle East by empowering Iran with nuclear weapons. Barack Obama, you could have people wanting to take down statues, street names, building names, libraries, all sorts of things with the names of people who are now in disrepute, and it never ends. It's better to teach our history. It's better to inform people about our history. It's better to erect statues or other recognitions of good role models than to engage in the selective destruction of Western civilization, selective destruction of America's history. And it's another way, and this rounding up this segment that's talking about the November ballot 5 issues that relate to freedom, the last one being this America's heritage being erased. There's nothing more that totalitarian people like coming to power than to say that the people are easily manipulated, the people can be manipulated because they have no cultural identity. They have no sense of who they are, no sense of what their country is, no sense of God in the founding of America, the rights of the individual to live in freedom, all those freedoms we were talking about in the beginning of the show. People are easily manipulated when they don't understand their history. They just surrender to the next thing that comes along. This is why totalitarians, including today's radical, tyrannical, totalitarian left, those people destroying the very fabric, the love, the freedom, just kind of woven into America's founding, all of that is rooted up when you can destroy our collective memory of our history and who we are as a people.